Well, hi everyone, Evan here, your proud American over anything, proud Trump supporter, and proud Republican. It is great to be with you. So, I want to talk about three different things in this video, but the first thing that I think is important that I would like to address in it is the explosive news report, and it was explosive indeed. According to a book titled Fire and Fury, Steve Bannon said that the meeting from months ago between Donald Trump Jr. and the Russian lawyer was treasonous. So, what do I think? Because everybody who's doing commentary on this, everybody, I think the audience in general wants to know what those people think. Now, I think people like to know, well, do you believe it? Do you think it's true? Well, yes, I do believe it, and yes, it has to be true. Nothing is 100% really in this world, or at least most things aren't. Hardly anything. But the truth is that in the press briefing today, Sarah Huckabee Sanders did anything but deny that it was true. The whole time when Fox News correspondent Kevin Corke or other correspondents there, press, the other people in the press there were asking the question, she didn't deny it. So it really has to be true. And although the media would like to say that everything Trump says is just him blurting his emotional feelings out, right? He just blurts things out without thinking. I think he knows about this because he did work with former chief strategist Steve Bannon. So, I want to be clear. I do like Steve Bannon. Even now, I like Steve Bannon. I don't love Steve Bannon like I love Trump. I don't think that Steve Bannon is a good representative for the Republican Party like I think Trump is. And I don't think Bannon makes smart moves most of the time. And I think Trump does make smart moves most of the time. All of us Trump supporters like Bannon. Number one, he's like Trump. He is a fighter. Number two, he's a populist conservative. And number three, he really, really loves America. So we all have reasons for really loving Bannon. But what I found very outrageous was that a conservative who, yes, likes Trump, but was more loyal to Bannon, clearly, and more loyal to him and her working for Breitbart News, said that these insults in the statement, which I will read in a couple seconds, is alienating his base. And I am his base. I am one of those always Trumpers who will never leave his side. There are so many other supporters who won't leave his side. That is a false lie. And Sarah Huckabee Sanders responded to that. And I have the soundbite here. So this was Sarah Huckabee Sanders responding when one of the people in the press asked her, what about this alienating her base? Before I play it, it is totally false. His base is still with him. His base did not vote for Bannon. His base voted for Trump. Bannon's not president. Bannon's not running for anything. And I think people know, everybody knows, that this is just a lie. And if you say it, then you know it's a lie. Everybody is with Trump. There is no maybe, no if. There is no way that this is a wrong fact. Unlike certain opinions, this is a fact. His base is still as loyal as November, the early morning of November 9th, or when Trump made his victory speech and got elected. They are still that loyal. So here's the soundbite.
I don't think it does anything to the president's base. The base and the people that supported this president supported the president and supported his agenda. Those things haven't changed. The president's still exactly who he was yesterday as he was 2 years ago when he started out on the campaign trail. His agenda hasn't changed, and he's continuing to fight for it and push for that agenda. And I think the base is extremely excited and happy with the job that this president has done in his...
So that was her answer. So the base is still with him, and I kind of think it's a, it's not a terrible question, but it's just a question that really makes no sense to be asked, with all due respect, because why would his base leave him? His base, the base showed a very high liking of Bannon, but the base also showed a big liking for someone like Reince Priebus, or they showed, I remember for some, showed somewhat of a liking for James Comey, because they thought that he would be a big help to Trump winning, and now the base doesn't like Comey. I was kind of happy Comey came out with that, but I don't like Comey anymore. Not everybody, I didn't love Comey, not everybody did, but I think the base knows that there are going to be people who turn on Trump, and they are prepared, or they are, at least, okay, knowing that, because in the end of the day, they're going to be MAGA supporters, Make America Great Again. They're not going to be Bannon supporters or Bannon loyalists. And so that's what I think about this thing. Now, as far as the statement that President Trump made, the statement reads, quote unquote, Steve Bannon has nothing to do with me or my presidency. When he was fired, he not only lost his job, he lost his mind. So, very explanatory. Steve was a staffer who worked for me, and I had already won the nomination by defeating 17 candidates, often described as the most talented field ever assembled in the Republican Party. Now that he is on his own, Steve is learning that winning isn't as easy as I make it look. Steve had very little to do with our historic victory. So that kind of stands out to me, because he didn't say he didn't have anything to do with it. He just said he had little to do with him having that historic election. And that's true. He did have something to do with it, which was delivered by the forgotten men and women of this country. Yet Steve had everything to do with the loss of a Senate seat in Alabama, held for more than 30 years by Republicans. And again, whether you like Moore, I didn't like Moore. I believed a lot of the stories. I didn't believe the one with the yearbook, kind of now, because of what came out about it. But whether you liked Moore or not, he could have had a Republican seat if we just kind of went for Luther Strange. Luther Strange, I really don't think was as swamp-like as everybody made him seem to be. But I think it was the fault of Bannon for making him lose. Steve doesn't represent my base. He's only in it for himself. Now this is the part that really stood out to me. Steve pretends to be at war with the media, which he calls the opposition party, yet he spent his time at the White House leaking false information to the media to make himself seem far more important than he was. It is the only thing that he does well, making himself seem important is what he does well, but the part that stood out to me, if you heard, once again, Steve pretends to be at war with the fake news media, or the opposition party, as he calls it, yet he spent his time at the White House leaking false info. So he's a leak. He's a leaker. And that is such good news that we learned that Bannon is a leaker. And I don't think President Trump would put that out. Now, unlike Comey, which probably was leaking for really bad reasons, there are hundreds of other deep state people. But unlike Comey and the deep state, I think both Priebus and Bannon were indeed leakers. At least Bannon, because Trump just said it. Trump never really admitted Priebus, I don't think, being a leaker. I might have to look, I'm pretty sure. But if he did, my mistake. But even if he did, the idea is that, or the view I have is that Priebus and Bannon, being leakers, weren't to hurt Trump, but were just to, put things out there because they wanted to, and because they were kind of, playing games and fooling around. So once again, I don't think Bannon was the perfect guy to hire. Now, there were two things. Number one, Trump, when he hired Bannon, he got a lot of recommendations for a lot of people. Some Trump looked more closely than others for the important positions: Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Homeland Security. He's going to really study those people. But maybe in a little bit less, not that he didn't study Bannon at all, or maybe he did not study certain people at all, but he didn't study them as much because, well, it's not as an important position. It's important, but not as important as the Secretary of Defense defending the whole, United States, or the Department of State, which is this, diplomacy with other countries, and dealing with Little Rocket Man, who's another, big news story, but nevertheless, I think it's still outrageous that he was a leaker. Okay? It's not like a leak. Oh, Trump had this conversation with Australia, and, yeah, he said this, and that, classified information, but they're still leaking. It's not right, and I do believe it. So, that's good information that we learned, okay? And I really did like that happened. So, I do think this was important to come out. Of course, the media is going to always be 24/7 now. What do you feel about Bannon? Trump told you what he felt about Bannon. I'm not even sure if Trump's going to talk a lot more about it. I didn't check his latest tweet. He might have, and I don't know about it, but the last time I checked wasn't too long ago, and he didn't again tweet, he just made a statement. And I think that's the furthest he's going to go. It seems Trump kind of keeps a little bit more quiet, and, maybe Trump's kind of loyal to Bannon and kind of loyal to Priebus because they were kind of loyal to him, but he'll call them out just as hard if he thinks that they're doing something wrong. So I don't think any of us should put that away. So that's what I feel about the whole issue. It's good that it came out, but ultimately, we don't have any kind of big allegiance to Bannon like we do to God, or loyalty like we do to Trump for helping us with the things that, by the way, God and Christianity and just American patriotism and just the Make America Great Again agenda represent. We don't have to be loyal to Bannon, to Steve Bannon. That is the end of that. So the second thing I wanted to talk about was some of my predictions of 2018. Now, I'm not as smart as a lot of other political commentators, but I do have a good amount of knowledge on the elections and things, so I feel that in 2018, because everybody wants to know what's going to happen to the House, what's going to happen to the Senate. Now, my first prediction, I have two. It's either going to be, the first thing I think, which it's going to be, the Senate is going to be a little bit more Democratic or a little bit more Republican. It could very well likely be a little bit more Democratic, but it's going to be a, 50-50 kind of a Senate. Okay? The second thing is that if any party is to lose massively, it's going to be the Democratic Party. Why? Well, the Republican Party, the spirit for Donald Trump, and excuse me, and the spirit for Donald Trump's revolution, right, is so high, the energy, that us, me, other Trump supporters, all of us in the Trump movement want to keep those seats. So we're going to fight for them. So we're not going to, in any way, shape, or form, or in any kind of, under circumstance, allow that to happen. So, we're going to have to fight. And that's what a lot of us will do. Okay, so it's either going to be half and half, which is what first I would bet my home on, if I ever bet my home, but I never would. It would be very weird for us to bet our house. But however, the second thing that I think would happen, possibility, is that the Republicans win massively, because it's a different president, it's a different time. With Trump, things are different, so you might very well likely see the Republicans massively inflow, even though the opposite party wins a lot of the time. And those are my predictions. As far as the House with rural communities that have economic problems, poverty, and a bunch of different social issues, which our great President of the United States won on, those are going to stay Republican, because usually I think the Senate is more easy to pick up seats, and you've seen the Democrats little here and there get a headway. Doug Jones was really more Roy Moore losing, and New Jersey was just that it doesn't always go Republican. Chris Christie was 1 in 3,000, 1 in 4,000 kind of a chance. But however, the Democrats are not terrible at picking up seats, so it could happen. The last thing I wanted to talk about is a book. Now, this book is really, really good, as much as I have read so far, but I don't need to read the whole book to be able to promote it. Now, for those of you who didn't hear it, if you did hear about it, I want to promote it anyway, because I really love the book, and it's so far, I think it's going to be the best Trump book I ever read. It's called The Making of the President, okay? How Donald Trump orchestrated a revolution, Roger Stone. One was made about Kennedy, okay? Now, Kennedy won the election in 1961. He was inaugurated, so it was 1960 when he got elected. And they made one about him, so this is a similar book. Okay, now it's by Roger Stone. For those of you who don't know, Roger Stone is a very close ally of Donald Trump. Okay, so if you want to, this book has so many great things in it. Okay, and nobody knows Trump more than Roger Stone, and if you read a lot of the summaries and a lot of the things within this book, you will find out that it was Stone who most ultimately, overall, over anyone else, influenced Donald Trump to run in the first place. Okay? Now, I'm not going to read all the chapter names, okay? But the one chapter name is really good. And the chapter name is, the part name is How Donald Trump Hijacked the Republican Presidential Nomination. Part 2, How Hillary Clinton Stole the Democratic Presidential Nomination. And Part 3, How Trump Won the White House, okay? So the summary, from Roger Stone, a New York Times best-selling author, longtime political advisor, and friend to Donald Trump, and consummate Republican strategist, comes the first in-depth examination of how Trump's campaign tapped into the national mood to deliver a stunning victory that almost no one saw coming. In the early hours of November 9th, 2016, one of the most contentious, polarizing, and vicious presidential races came to an abrupt and unexpected end when heavily favored President hopeful Hillary Clinton called Donald J. Trump to concede, shocking a nation that had only hours before given little credence to his chances. Donald Trump pulled the greatest upset in American political history. True. Very. Despite a torrent of invective and dismissal of the mainstream media, here's the first definitive explanation about how the silent majority shifted the election to Donald Trump in reliable Democratic Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, thus handing him the presidency. Okay? So, the book is massively filled with great things about Trump. And I really hope you will get it. It talks about how since 1988, because everybody says, everybody states and says Trump never was in politics or involved. He was never elected into any office before, and he's the ultimate outsider, but he was involved in politics, and Roger Stone, whether he was a Democrat, independent, when he ran for the party called the Reform Party in the 1990s, Roger Stone was with him, no matter what he ran as and what he was running for. But I think Roger Stone prefers this kind of agenda that he has evolved into a fan of Trump, because Roger Stone has always been a Republican. So, I hope, by the way, if I spoiled anything, I'm sorry, but I think most of us are able to understand that a lot of these things are already put out in the air for us to know. So the one part that I wanted to read before I end the video that I really like, it's a sentence or so. It says, Donald Trump has the opportunity to be a truly great president. He comes to the office beholden to no one but the American people. His campaign was eschewed by financial and political elites. He triumphed despite being vastly outspent in both the primaries and the general election. The freedom gives him wide latitude for reform. And that is probably the best line that you will read in the book. It talks about in this book his political philosophy, how he's a populist first, conservative second, and how he really takes what his positions are. The whole journey from when he got elected in the primaries, a lot of things on Ted Cruz. For those Ted Cruz supporters, I still hate Ted Cruz, lying Ted all the way. You'll find out a lot in this book. One of my best friends loves Ted Cruz. And this book would tell him everything he needs to know of how Ted Cruz lied about so much in his life. So, there's so much things about his journey in this book, and it really explains the whole idea of why Donald Trump became the 45th president, leader of the free world, and the greatest nation. So everybody, God bless you, God bless America, and make America great again, okay? Have a great day.